It was close to midnight when Omar reached the last bus stop on the edge of the city. A thick layer of fog covered the empty road, swallowing everything beyond a few meters. The only source of light was a weak, flickering street lamp above the rusted bus sign. Its buzzing sound echoed faintly in the cold night air. Omar checked his phone. 11:57 p.m. The last bus would arrive in 3 minutes. He hugged his jacket tighter around himself, not just because of the cold, but because of the strange feeling creeping into his chest. The streets were unusually silent. No passing cars, no distant voices, not even the sound of wind. It felt as if the entire world had paused. He looked around. The small waiting bench behind him was cracked and covered in dust. An old torn poster flapped lightly against the metal pole, though there was no visible breeze. Then, in the distance, he saw them. 2 faint headlights glowing through the fog. They didn't move like normal headlights. They seemed to flicker, almost pulse, as if breathing. Omar swallowed. For a brief second, he considered turning back. Something about this night felt wrong. Too still, too quiet. But he had no choice. He had to get home. The headlights grew brighter as the bus slowly emerged from the fog. The engine made a low, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the road. The bus stopped in front of him. The doors opened with a long, metallic hiss. No one stepped out. No one was visible inside. And yet, Omar felt certain he was being watched. Omar hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. The bus doors closed behind him with a sharp metallic clang that echoed louder than it should have. The sound made him flinch. For a moment, he thought about asking the driver something, anything, just to break the silence. But the driver didn't look at him. He sat stiffly in his seat, hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. His face was pale, almost gray under the dim dashboard light. His eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking. Omar slowly walked down the narrow aisle. The bus was nearly empty. Only a few seats had old newspapers scattered on them. No bags, no passengers, no sound except the faint hum of the engine and the soft flicker of overhead lights. The air inside was colder than outside, colder in a way that didn't feel natural. He chose a seat near the back, placing his bag beside him. As the bus began moving again, the lights above him flickered violently for a few seconds before stabilizing. The windows were fogged from the inside. Omar wiped one with his sleeve to look outside, but all he could see was darkness and thick mist swallowing the road behind them. The bus didn't feel like it was moving normally. There were no bumps, no turns he could feel. It was as if they were gliding. Then something strange caught his attention. The sound of breathing. Slow, deep, not from the driver, not from himself, but somewhere behind him. And he was sure. He had been alone when he sat down. The breathing stopped the moment Omar turned his head. The aisle behind him was empty, every seat untouched, every shadow still. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm himself. "You're imagining things," he muttered under his breath. Just then, he heard slow footsteps moving down the aisle. He turned forward again. The conductor was walking toward him. Omar was certain he hadn't seen anyone else when he entered the bus. Yet here the conductor was, tall, thin, dressed in an old-fashioned uniform that looked slightly faded, as if it belonged to another time. The man's face was pale, almost lifeless. His eyes didn't blink. "Ticket," the conductor said quietly. His voice sounded distant. "Hello." Omar quickly pulled out his wallet. "1 ticket to Central Station," he said. The conductor stared at him for a long moment without speaking. Then, without breaking eye contact, he tore 2 tickets from his pad and placed them in Omar's trembling hand. Omar frowned. "I said 1," he whispered. The conductor leaned slightly closer. His breath was unnaturally cold. "You're not traveling alone," he replied in a low, emotionless tone. Omar's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" he asked, forcing a nervous laugh. But the conductor didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away slowly, disappearing toward the front of the bus. Omar looked down at the tickets in his hand. Both were stamped with the same time, 12 a.m. But the second ticket had something different printed beneath it. No seat number, no destination, just a single word: return. Omar stared at the second ticket. Return. His fingers felt numb as he slowly folded both tickets and slipped them into his pocket. He told himself it was just a mistake. Maybe the conductor was tired. Maybe this was some strange joke. But deep down, something didn't feel right. The bus continued moving through the thick fog. The engine made a low humming sound that felt almost rhythmic, like breathing. Then he heard it again, a slow inhale. Right behind him, Omar's body stiffened. His heart began pounding loudly in his ears. He didn't want to turn around, but he had to. Very slowly, he twisted in his seat. The back row was empty, completely empty. No movement, no figure, no shadow. He let out a shaky breath and turned forward again. That's when he saw it. In the window beside him, in the faint reflection of the flickering bus lights, he wasn't alone. There was something sitting next to him. A dark shape. Still, unnaturally tall. He froze. He turned his head toward the seat beside him. Nothing. The seat was empty. His breathing became uneven. He looked back at the window reflection. The shadow was still there, and it was closer. Suddenly, the bus lights shut off completely. Darkness swallowed everything. For 3 long seconds, there was only silence. Then, the sound of fabric shifting, as if someone had just adjusted themselves in the seat right behind him. And this time, the breathing was louder. Omar's pulse thundered in his ears as he backed away from the empty driver's seat. The engine was still running, vibrating through the metal floor, yet no one was controlling the bus. Outside, the fog thickened. The silhouettes along the roadside were no longer faint. They were clearer now, human shapes, standing perfectly still, facing the bus. Omar slowly looked up at the large rearview mirror fixed above the windshield. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the empty aisle behind him. Then the reflection changed. The back seats were no longer empty. Every single seat was occupied. Dark, motionless figures sat upright, their heads tilted slightly forward. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and they were all staring directly at him. Omar's breath caught in his throat. He spun around instantly. The bus was still empty. No one there. No one breathing. His hands trembled as he looked back into the mirror again. The figures were closer now, and in the very last row, he saw himself, sitting silently, head lowered, eyes closed, wearing the same clothes, unmoving. A cold wave of realization crashed over him. This wasn't just a bus ride. This wasn't a random stop. The driver, the conductor, the passengers, they weren't alive. The bus suddenly lurched forward at full speed, accelerating into the fog without anyone at the wheel. And in the mirror, all the hollow eyes slowly shifted upward, locking onto him at the same time. Omar's pulse thundered in his ears as he backed away from the empty driver's seat. The engine was still running, vibrating through the metal floor, yet no one was controlling the bus. Outside, the fog thickened. The silhouettes along the roadside were no longer faint. They were clearer now, human shapes, standing perfectly still, facing the bus. Omar slowly looked up at the large rearview mirror fixed above the windshield. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the empty aisle behind him. Then the reflection changed. The back seats were no longer empty. Every single seat was occupied. Dark, motionless figures sat upright, their heads tilted slightly forward. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and they were all staring directly at him. Omar's breath caught in his throat. He spun around instantly. The bus was still empty. No one there. No one breathing. His hands trembled as he looked back into the mirror again. The figures were closer now, and in the very last row, he saw himself, sitting silently, head lowered, eyes closed, wearing the same clothes, unmoving. A cold wave of realization crashed over him. This wasn't just a bus ride. This wasn't a random stop. The driver, the conductor, the passengers, they weren't alive. The bus suddenly lurched forward at full speed, accelerating into the fog without anyone at the wheel. And in the mirror, all the hollow eyes slowly shifted upward, locking onto him at the same time. The bus sped wildly into the fog. Omar screamed, grabbing onto the nearest seat as the vehicle swerved violently. The engine roared louder and louder, as if it were no longer mechanical, but alive. "Stop! Please stop!" he shouted. But there was no driver, no conductor, only the hollow figures in the mirror, watching. The speed increased. The fog ahead began to glow faintly, illuminated by distant flashing red and blue lights. Suddenly, impact. A deafening crash tore through the night. Everything went black. Silence followed. The next morning, emergency responders stood along a familiar stretch of road. Twisted metal lay scattered near the broken roadside barrier. Smoke drifted slowly into the cold air. Police officers examined the wreckage of an old bus. According to records, it had crashed on this road years ago at exactly 12 a.m. All passengers were declared dead, but something didn't make sense. Inside the bus, they found a fresh wallet, a phone, and an ID card. The name read, Omar Hassan. Time of estimated death, 12 a.m. The officer frowned. That's impossible, he muttered, because according to the system, that bus hadn't been in service for 5 years. And as the wreckage was cleared away, the fog slowly rolled back in. Waiting.